Chapter 26, read by Miss King. "We'll get you at lunch, Chalkers," Robbie whispered as Bradley returned to class. "You're late," said Mrs. Ebble. He sat at his desk, last seat, last row, and looked at the chart on the wall next to him. Of course, there was no gold star next to his name. He had already done 3 things wrong. First, he had knocked over a girl and made her cry. Second, he was late getting back to class. And third, and worst of all, his name was Bradley Chalkers. As long as his name was Bradley Chalkers, he'd never get a gold star. They don't give gold stars to monsters. They beat up monsters. He looked around at Jeff, Robbie, Russell and Brian. He had to concentrate very hard to keep from crying. The worst part wasn't getting beaten up. The worst part was that he knew everyone would love it so much. He imagined the whole school, the boys, the girls and even the teachers, standing by and cheering as Jeff's gang took turns in hitting and kicking him. When the bell rang for lunch, he slowly took his paper sack out of his desk. "We'll be waiting for you outside," Jeff said to him. Bradley watched him walk out the door. He walked slowly toward the front of the room, then suddenly dashed out the door and into the hall. "Bradley, come back here," Mrs. Ebble yelled. He kept running. So what if he got in trouble? What difference did it make? He pulled on the door to the library. It wouldn't budge. The library was closed during lunch. He tried to think of somewhere else he'd be safe. "There he is," said Doug, stepping out of the auditorium. Bradley turned and ran back the way he had come. He rounded a corner, then stopped and made a quick and desperate decision. He opened the door to the girls' bathroom, closed his eyes and stepped inside. He opened his eyes. Luckily, the room was empty. He held his breath and listened. Nothing could be worse than being beaten up inside the girls' bathroom. "They'd probably stick my head in a girl's toilet," he thought. He waited. He didn't hear anything. He looked around. The floor and the bottom half of the walls were covered in green tile. There were 2 white sinks and a paper towel dispenser. There were 3 toilets in 3 separate stalls. Each stall had a door. It looked very much like the boys' bathroom. Girls' toilets appeared to be the same as boys' toilets. He was disappointed. He couldn't risk going back out into the hall. He leaned against one of the stalls, reached into his brown paper sack and took out his roast beef sandwich. Someone was opening the door. He quickly put the sandwich back in the bag and hopped into a stall, closing the door behind him. He stood on the toilet so his feet couldn't be seen. He listened. He heard a person walk across the tiled floor and then enter the stall next to him. He covered his mouth with his hand as he heard some familiar but very private sounds. At last the toilet door flushed and he heard the person zip her pants and walk across to the sink. He heard the sound of running water and then a paper towel pulled down from the dispenser. Finally, the bathroom door opened and shut. He exhaled, hopped off the toilet, stepped out of the stall and froze. 2 girls were staring at him. One was the girl who had used the toilet next to him. The other had just entered. He wondered which was which. Then he heard the loudest scream he had ever heard in his whole life. That answered the question. He darted past them, opened the door and flew out into the hall. He rounded a corner, came to a door and pounded wildly on it until it opened. "Bradley?" said Carla. "Hello, Carla." He held out his hand. "It's a pleasure to see you today." Ebble's class. Last seat, last row, black eye. His handwriting, which was messy anyhow, was made worse by the fact that he wrote with a dull pencil on top of a soft bed. He had stayed in Mrs. Ebble's class as long as he could after the bell rang. "Bradley, it's time to go home," Mrs. Ebble finally said to him. He looked outside, unsure if Jeff and his gang of bullies were waiting out for him. I have a question," he said. Mrs. Ebble eyed him suspiciously. What kind of question? He tried to figure out what kind of question he had. "An asking question?" "I see," said Mrs. Ebble. "May I ask it?" he asked. "Okay," she said reluctantly. He asked his question. "What page is the homework on?" "The homework? Page 43. He wrote 43 on the top of his sneaker so he wouldn't forget, Then he took his arithmetic book and stepped outside. Jeff and his friends were playing basketball. He ran home. Now he looked hopelessly at page 43, shook his head and sighed. Question 1. What is 3/4 of 2/3? It was the most impossible question he'd ever seen. His mind wandered. Hey Bradley, what are you doing? Asked Ronnie. Homework. What's homework? She asked. It's work you do at home. Is that supposed to be funny? She asked. No, really. That's what they do at school. They give you work to do at home and they call it homework. You've never done it before, said Ronnie. I'm doing it for Carla. Now leave me alone so I can concentrate. Question 1. What is 3/4 of 2/3? Why are you doing it for Carla? Ronnie asked. He sighed. Okay, I'll tell you, but you can't tell anyone. Ronnie promised not to tell. We're in love. Really? Exclaimed Ronnie. How do you know? She kissed me. Ooh, that means she loves you, said Ronnie. Are you going to marry her? Maybe, when I'm older. First, I have to do my homework. I'm going to marry Bartholomew, said Ronnie. I know, said Bradley. Now let me do my homework. Question 1. What is 3/4 of 2/3? Hey Bradley, what's going on? Asked Bartholomew. Leave him alone, said Ronnie. He's trying to do his homework. He can't concentrate when you're talking to him. Maybe I can help, said Bartholomew. What's the problem? What is 3/4 of 2/3? Bradley asked. 3/4 of 2/3, Bartholomew repeated. That's a tough problem, all right. 3/4 of 2/3. Let's see. You divide 4 into... No. You multiply 2 times... No. Of means divide, said the donkey. Like if you take half of something, it means you divide it by 2. You divide 3 by 2 and 4 by 3. Bradley started to write that down. No, of means times, said the lion. You have to multiply everything. First you have to reverse the nominators, said the fox. You don't reverse, you inverse, corrected the mother cocker spaniel. I think you have to find a common denominator, said the elephant. Not for multiplication, said the hippopotamus. That's only for addition. Multiplication is the same as addition, said the fox, only faster. You cancel out the 3s, said the kangaroo. You always cancel out the 3s. You multiply the 3s, said the lion. Bradley kept erasing and rewriting and erasing and rewriting until there was nothing left but a big black smudge covering his paper. On top of the smudge, he tried to write 3 times 3 equals 9, but as he did so, his pencil tore a hole through the paper. The answer can't be 9, said Ronnie. If you start out with fractions, you have to end up with fractions. Bradley slammed the book shut. None of you know what you're talking about, he cried out in disgust. He took the book, paper and pencil and walked down the hall into the dining room. His mother was sitting at the table working a crossword puzzle from the newspaper. He plopped down next to her and sighed. She looked at him inquisitively. I can't figure out how to do my homework, he complained. Will you help me? His mother smiled. I'd be delighted. Let me see. He pushed his arithmetic book in front of her. Page 43. She opened the book on that page and looked at Bradley's torn, smudged paper. Okay, first let me clear away this newspaper so we can have a nice, neat place to work. While I do that, I want you to get a clean sheet of paper. I don't have any more paper. This is all I brought home. There's some paper in your father's desk. Get a sharp pencil too. He looked at her in disbelief. He wasn't allowed to touch anything on his father's desk. She nodded. Bradley felt a little scared as he walked into the extra bedroom which his father used as an office. He opened the top drawer of the old oak desk and carefully took out a pencil and a piece of paper. He shut the drawer, looked around, then hurried back to his mother. She smiled at him. He sat down and wrote, much neater this time. Bradley Chalkers, homework, arithmetic, page 43, Red Hill School, room 12, Mrs. Ebble's class, last seat, last row, black eye. You have to put all that, he explained, in case it gets lost. She read the first question aloud. What is 3/4 of 2/3? He shrugged. Okay, she said. The first thing you want to do is write the equation. He still didn't know what to do. She wrote it for him. 3/4 times 2/3 equals. Whenever you see the word of, it means multiply, she explained. Of means times, he said. Right, said his mother. That was what the lion had said. Now you can cancel out the threes, said his mother. That was what the kangaroo had said. You always cancel out threes. Neither of them noticed that Claudia was standing behind them, watching. That's not how you're supposed to learn it, she said abruptly. Bradley turned around and glared at her. You have to explain why you cancel them, said Claudia. And they don't call it cancelling, it's called dividing by one. I just know the way I learned it, said Mrs. Chalkers. If you want, I can show Bradley, said Claudia. He looked at his mother, then back at Claudia, then at his mother. She knows the way they're teaching it now, said his mother. You'll help me? Bradley asked his sister. Sure, why not? I got nothing better to do. Mrs. Chalkers stood up and Claudia took her place. Don't do it for him, said Bradley's mother. Make sure he knows how to do it himself. Claudia worked patiently with Bradley for the rest of the afternoon. When he said he understood something, she made him explain it to her. That was harder. He understood it when she did it, but then he had trouble when he tried to do it himself. By dinner time, they were only a little more than halfway through. Bradley wanted Claudia to help him after dinner too, but she had her own homework to do. You know how to do it, she told him. You can do it yourself. I need help, he complained. I'll help you, said his father. You will? Let's go to my office. We can work at my desk. Bradley couldn't believe it. They worked together. Bradley was surprised by how much his father knew. He made all the hard parts seem easy. Bradley was a little disappointed by how quickly they finished. He had liked working with his father. He brought his finished homework back to his room. Oh, I get it, Bradley, said Bartholomew. You multiply the numerators and the denominators separately. But I still don't understand reducing. It's easy, said Bradley. Here, let me show you again.